Grace and peace to you. Welcome back to Spiritual Armament, Conversations with God, where we gather strength for the days we're living in and clarity for the battles we're facing. This is where we sharpen our discernment, reclaim our authority, and step into the identity God has spoken over us. Before any soldier enters a battlefield, they must know who they are. Identity determines posture, identity determines confidence. Identity determines authority. The enemy doesn't fear your emotions. He doesn't fear your opinions. He fears your identity because your identity carries God's endorsement. And when you don't know who you are, you fight battles you are already equipped to win. But when you know who you are, you stop fighting for victory and start fighting from victory. That brings us to today's episode, the Armory of Identity. To understand how identity functions as spiritual armament, we're walking through 8 identity based revelations, 8 truths that fortify the believer and restore spiritual authority. Each section is a weapon, a reminder, and a call to reclaim what God has spoken. Section 1. Identity begins with God's declaration. Identity does not begin with your past, your mistakes, your trauma, or your upbringing. Identity begins with what God declares. Before Jeremiah was formed, God said, I knew you. Before Gideon fought, God called him mighty man of valor. Before Peter preached, Jesus called him the rock. God always speaks identity before performance. This means your identity is not earned, it is received. And when God declares something over you, no storm, no demon, no insecurity, and no opinion can override it. Section 2. Identity is the first target of spiritual warfare. The enemy attacked Eve's identity. Did God really say? He attacked Jesus' identity. If you are the Son of God, he attacks your identity the same way, through doubt, distortion, and discouragement. Why? Because if he can confuse who you are, he can control how you live. Identity confusion leads to spiritual paralysis, but identity clarity leads to spiritual authority. Warfare intensifies around identity because identity determines victory. Section 3. Redeemed. Identity is rooted in sonship. You are not merely a believer, you are a child of God. Sonship means access, inheritance, covering, and authority. Sonship means you don't fight for acceptance, you fight from acceptance. Sonship means you don't beg for what already belongs to you. Sonship is the foundation of spiritual confidence. When you know you are God's child, you stop approaching life as a victim and start standing as an heir. Section 4. Identity unlocks authority. Authority is not loudness, it is alignment. Authority flows from knowing who you are and whose you are. When Jesus spoke, demons obeyed because his identity was settled. When the disciples spoke without identity, demons mocked them. Jesus I know, Paul I know, but who are you? Authority is the spiritual weight that comes from identity. When you know your identity, your words carry heaven's backing. Section 5. The power of say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Identity is not silent, it is spoken. Your voice is a spiritual instrument. Your confession is a spiritual weapon. When you declare what God has said, you reinforce identity in the spirit realm. When you stay silent, the enemy fills the silence with lies. Say so means you speak your identity until your spirit aligns, your atmosphere shifts, and your faith rises. Identity must be voiced to be activated. Section 6. Identity stabilizes you in warfare. When you know who you are, storms don't shake you, they reveal you. Identity becomes an anchor in chaotic times. Identity keeps you from being tossed by emotions, opinions, or spiritual pressure. Identity gives you spiritual footing when everything else is unstable. A believer who knows their identity is unshakable, unmovable, and spiritually grounded. Section 7. Identity must be reclaimed after damage. Life can bruise identity. People can distort identity. Failure can fracture identity, but identity can be reclaimed. God restores what life tried to redefine. He renames what trauma mislabeled. He rebuilds what insecurity tried to dismantle. Identity is not lost, it is rediscovered. And God specializes in restoring the parts of you that life tried to break. Section 8. Walking in identity daily. Identity is not a moment, it is a lifestyle. You walk in identity through prayer, confession, scripture, obedience, and spiritual awareness. Identity must be fed, protected, and reinforced. Daily identity is victory. When you walk in identity consistently, you stop reacting to life and start governing your atmosphere. Identity becomes your rhythm, your posture, and your spiritual armor. It's at this particular point in the message that I desire to offer my listening and viewing audience this overall encouragement. You are not who life said you were. You are not who fear said you were. You are not who trauma said you were. You are who God says you are, and heaven stands behind that identity. Walk boldly, stand firmly, speak confidently. Your identity is your armory, and God has equipped you well. In this episode, we explored identity as spiritual armament, how God defines it, how the enemy attacks it, and how the believer activates it. We uncovered 8 identity based weapons that restore authority, confidence, and spiritual clarity. As you move through this week, don't shrink back from who God has called you to be. Stand in your identity, speak from your identity, live from your identity. You are redeemed, chosen, equipped, and authorized. And the more you walk in identity, the more heaven's strength flows through you. In our next episode, we're stepping into the realm of spiritual perception, how to see, sense, and discern what God is doing in chaotic times. Episode 3 is titled The Watchman's Eye, Understanding Spiritual Discernment, Recognizing Divine Signals, and Navigating Unseen Warfare. If this episode strengthens your identity, share it with someone who needs to remember who they are in God. Like the video so more people can find this message. And subscribe so you don't miss episode 3. We're building spiritual strength together, one conversation with God at a time.